Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I will throw now to Dr. Adam Taylor, who will get this webinar started.
Thanks, Freya. And just before I do introduce myself, can I introduce you all to Freya Leishout and Bianca Mellis? Freya is a member of the university team who works with future students, and thus her role here tonight. And thank you, Freya, for the work that you've done in preparation for this evening. Bianca knows everything there is to know about the internship. Freya is the master of internship. At the administration of the program this year. She can answer questions for it that I certainly can't. I rely heavily on Bianca's fabulous work in the ASO, the Academic Services Office. So thank you, Bianca, for the work that you've done in preparation ahead of tonight. And so let's begin. So we begin with an introduction, if I could, to myself. As Freya said, my name is Adam Taylor. I'm the course coordinator for the Master of Teaching Secondary Internship. This program is it has a long genesis going back many years, but in its current form, it's only in its second year. What's different about the MTSI Teach Out, as it's known, which will finish this year, and the MTSI for which you are applying, is that the Teach Out course was not aligned to the Master of Teaching regular degree. The Master of Teaching, in every respect, in scope, sequence, and content, is the same course as the Master of Teaching in its other three modes of study: regular mode, the extended mode, and the accelerated mode. And that means that, and we have joining us here tonight, no doubt, candidates who are currently first year Master of Teaching students who are able to transfer for their second year into the internship program. This is only my second year in the academy at University of Melbourne. Previously, I've operated in the non-government sector as a principal and as a deputy principal for 25 years in New South Wales, in Sydney, as well as in Melbourne. And most recently, prior to coming to University of Melbourne, as a national director with a network of Catholic schools, and 55 schools that operated schools nationally. So I know schools well, and I hope I can share with you some insights as a former employer of interns and teachers, some things that would be important for you to get right in your preparation for your work in 2025. Let's begin with an acknowledgement of country to acknowledge those amongst us who are First Nations people, and in particular to acknowledge the place of Indigenous knowledges in the academy and their importance as other ways of knowing, which deeply enrich our Australian culture as First Peoples, and also to recommit ourselves tonight once again to a reconciled Australia. The things that we'll cover tonight are threefold. This session aims to, first of all, help you to understand that what you're going into is an employment situation, but there is also a partnership between your school and the university, and that partnership is incredibly important to your success. How the employment process, that is the process that we're in right now, will work for the pool of schools for which you have opted, that is the Victorian non-government schools, and to support you through and help you navigate the interview and employment offer process during this employment period. So as I mentioned, we're now in the 2025 MTSI employment period timeline. Don't worry about the first stop point that the employment period has now started. It didn't start long ago. It was only this week on the 9th of September. So it's very, very early days, but now is the time for you to act. The exclusive period runs until 28th of October. And let me explain to you what's meant by that term exclusive period. Quite rightly, the Department of Education and the non-government sector are looking to consider candidates for internship in a pool where they're not going to be gazumped, for want of a better word, by another sector. So that's why we asked students in fairness to, and as an act of professionalism, to the employing sectors to determine where you preferred to be employed. You've chosen to be in the non-government school pool. So that's what we're calling those pools are what will operate in the exclusive period. That is to say, you are asked to, and you will be excluded from the internship program if you breach this condition. We ask you to only seek employment in the sector for which you have nominated until the 28th of October. Now, there will be cases where there will be some individuals who won't have secured employment by the end of that period. That leads us to the third dot point, that there's a non-exclusive period. That is to say, the exclusive access to interns just by the government school pool or the non-government school pool, as the case may be. That exclusive period runs out on the 28th of October, and between 28th October and 11th November, if you're still seeking employment, you can be considered across any school that has put itself forward as a partner school for the MTSI program. Now I want to talk about Uni Connected, and this is brand new. So if you've spoken to students who started the internship in 2024, you're likely to, I don't know what's happening here, folks. So there we go. If you've spoken to them about what they did last year, what you'll see this year is that the process is slightly different. Just get that sorted out. Thank you. Right, so here we go. So this is the process is web-based, and it's a piece of software which has been developed by the Faculty of Education called Uni Connected. Some of you might be familiar with it already from its soft launch in May of this year. Uni Connected is an employment site where any student in currently the Faculty of Education at the University of Melbourne can put forward their profile, and with that profile can be seen and considered for a whole range of employments at school, casual employment, support for musicals, camps, sports coaching in your work, integrated learning. So it served that purpose, but it's also now the platform that will be used by employers for sourcing candidates for the internship. So to give you a bit of an idea of what that looks like, we'll pull over from here, and Freya assures me that you can now see the Uni Connected page. So here it is. Here's the opening page. I'll go in as a partner. So just to show you what the potential employers see, they'll sign in, and those schools which want to become a MTSI partner will click here. So that's important. So and that gives them the ability to pull in to them those candidates that they are interested in seeing. I'll say more about all that process in a moment. The second button here, which is there for employers, is schools that, and they don't have to press it, that allow direct contact. That is to say, they're happy for you to contact them, so you can push yourself out in front of them if that's what they want. The schools won't all choose to do that, and you'll see in a slide that's to come how you can tell which school's done this and which schools haven't. So that's what you need to do. So you see as I explained, the third dot point there, MTSI partner schools will search and review your profiles on Uni Connected. Now the profile is relatively limited. It asks for a very limited amount of detail. What's new in the Uni Connected profile, and it's new as of yesterday, is the opportunity for you to upload a PDF document to support your application. Schools are not expecting that at this point, but schools, and it's what you need to be prepared for, will contact you and may ask you for further information. So the advice, and it's coming in the next slide, is make sure you're prepared. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Fourth point, schools will contact you for information, as I've just said. They might request a CV. They might invite you to an interview. What's important is that, and it's very important for you to note, you need to write in your Uni Connected profile the learning area subjects which you have been approved for and which you will study. And you need to understand that you can only be employed to teach in those learning areas. Then the last point, you may contact schools displaying the MTSI badge, and I explained that to you, or showed you that direct contact button that they press, and we'll show you soon what that looks like from when you go onto the page. Let's move on now and look at what you need to do to be prepared. First of all, have your curriculum vitae, your resume, and a cover letter ready to provide to interested schools. As I said to you just a moment ago, there's the opportunity to upload that, but you're not obliged to do that at this stage. What is important is that as an action from tonight, that you have you have registered with Uni Connected, and that you've supplied all of the basic information, and you can go back and add your CV later, or if you're continuing to work on that. You may be contacted by more than one school for an interview. Now, this is where there's an important point for me to make to you. It's like it is like any other market for employment, and then and in other ways it's not. For example, many Catholic schools, the majority of Catholic schools in Melbourne, are members of a system of schools. And even those that are not members of a system of schools and which are independently governed, they nonetheless are very well known to each other. And if you are invited to respond to a school and it's not the school for you, and you simply don't respond to them, that you develop a reputation. So it's very important that you demonstrate the highest standard of professionalism when you're contacted by schools. Let's have a scenario here. Say you've had 2 contacts from schools. You're really keen on one, and the other one, it may be in an area you're just not prepared to go, or you know something about the school and you know it's just not the right context for you. What you might do is, and don't leave it more than 24 or even perhaps at the outside 48 hours. But if you need time to reflect on it, and you've got another interview coming up, you might be in a position to say, thank you for your invitation, but I've been employed elsewhere. I appreciate the offer of an interview. Or if that's not the case and you simply don't want to take up the offer of a school for an interview, then you might find other courteous, professional ways to decline an interview. Personally, I have no idea why you would decline an interview, even if you have a notion that it's not quite the right school for you. Go through the interview process, and then if post-interview there's an offer, you're in a much better position to say, I've received a position elsewhere, or my circumstances are that I can't take up this offer. You need to find the words, but professional, courteous, and punctual are the key points there. Moving on to the 5th dot point, schools are likely to conduct interviews during business hours and in person. That is the most usual way in which that's done, and you need to. It's not often a negotiating point, although you may be in a position to have some flexibility there. But frequently, for example, schools will shortlist, They may have 3 or 4 candidates in mind. It's unlikely that they will have more, but they will want to compare those, and they'll want to do it in a process which often involves getting other people whose time is precious in to do that. They might have representatives from the community, for example. They might have a student representative. There's a whole range of ways in which schools do it. But the point about having different kinds of people is they want to do it one after the other, bang, 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 bang. So there's not a lot of flexibility there. So you need to make yourself available for interviews and simply acquiesce to the time and the day that they request, and move the mountains that you can to be there. Do consider relocation. It may not have been in the forefront of your mind, but there are some wonderful schools and communities in rural and regional Victoria. We've already had some great success stories in the MTSI of people who've fallen in love with new places where there is a sense of community and a sense of being known and a sense of affordability and support by the community for an intern, which could only be dreamed of in the city. Obviously, there's a huge number of factors to be considered there, all relating to your personal life. That's a decision for you, but I merely say do consider that, and don't close your mind off to that possibility. And if possible, and it's possible if schools are open to it, if they've indicated that they are open to your push, make direct contact with schools that you'd like to work with, so that you are not sitting back just waiting for someone to call you. Here's what a page of the schools would look like. You'll know as you use the filtering tool on Uni Connected, those schools which have put themselves forward as schools interested in taking on interns. And you'll see there's a couple of schools there, Scopus College on the left and Elevation Secondary School centre left, have both got a contact tag there. They're schools which are principals who pressed the allowed direct contact switch on their profile. So by all means contact them. But Saltwater Peter Nine College doesn't want you to contact them, they'll contact you. So they want to pull. Elevation Secondary College is happy to push and pull. Now, as it happens, that's you won't see Elevation because it's a government school, but Scopus is not. So that's in the independent sector, and that might be a school that you're interested in pushing your CV out. And it would be a cover letter saying, I write to you further to your openness to contact in the Uni Connected site as a potential intern, Melbourne University intern partnership school. Here's my CV and here's what I have on for your place. Let's talk a little bit about the interview process. The first subheading is perhaps the most pertinent point here. Every school is different and there's no one consistent approach. It would be typical, even though you are not a teacher, you're an intern requiring high levels of support, particularly in the beginning of your internship. Schools are aware that from day one, you will be given your own classes to teach. So that's a big commitment, and it's one which they will take very seriously. So it's likely that you'll be asked to sit in an interview, and it's likely that it'll be an interview with more than one person. It's unlikely that it'll be a panel of 6. It's likely to be a panel of 2, though. It's common for schools to walk around the school, although it's just as common for that not to happen. Be prepared for that as well, and have the kind of questions that might be interesting and which demonstrate your interest in your back pocket. One of the ways that you can do that and prepare is that be aware that every school, government and non-government, has a public internet presence. and it's relatively easy to to get a feel for what a school sees to be its point of difference, something it does particularly well, its demographic. It's also worth, and it's very easy to find because it's a requirement of the federal government that every school that receives federal government funding makes available their annual reports. Now, annual reports, the way in which most schools make them available is they put them in a corner of their website. They're generally not that hard to find. They're generally not a highly interesting read, but they do tell you something about the governance of the school, about its successes, about what they perceive to be their challenges. So if you're going to be well informed coming into an interview, do your homework, and there's and researching Forest School's website is a way to do that. And be prepared to talk to the leadership team. It may be the principal, it may be the HR manager and the deputy, but I can almost guarantee it, very senior people in the school. And they're good at making you feel welcome. You're there because they think you're a potential candidate for their school. They know you're an intern and they want to support new entrants to the profession. And so thinking about those positive things, seek to put your best foot forward. I've mentioned this tip, researching the school. Present yourself as a professional, both in the way you speak, but also in the way that you present yourself. What's the appropriate way to present yourself? Well, you pick up some of that culture from looking through the website and the kinds of photographs that are presented in their regular newsletters, which are also available on internet sites, and you'll get a feel for what's appropriate. But it would be more at the professional end, formal dress than informal. The kind of dress you'd expect the teachers to wear on parent-teacher night rather than on sports day. Be prepared to talk about yourself and what you can bring to the school. It's understood that you don't have school experience, but all of you have particular dispositions, particular strengths, particular interests. Bring that enthusiasm and those interests to the table at interview. Transfer students, you have got the little trick in your dilly bag of past results and placement reports, and talk about those placements and what was good about them, what was challenging about them, and what you learnt from them. A question we're often asked is, what will I get paid? It's worth noting here that not in this pool, but in the non-government pool, the Department of Education has made a deliberative decision, and I think this is a decision about supporting interns, of limiting the maximum teaching allocation to 0.6 plus 0.2. That is a total of a 0.8 load. Now you think, oh, I'd much rather work 1.0 FTE because you get paid more. That is 0.8 plus 0.2 of paid study leave. The department aren't silly. They've done that for a reason. To work full-time and study full-time is extremely demanding. Please don't hear me say it's not. It's easy. It's also incredibly rewarding to have the opportunity to do your teacher education fully immersed in a workplace, so that every bit of theory that's shared with you, you can relate to praxis. And that connection of theory and practice is the holy grail that people look for again and again. So just further on the first point, what we've said to non-government school employers is that you can employ interns a minimum of 0.8, that is 0.6 teaching allocation plus 0.2 study leave on a Friday, up to 0.8 teaching allocation with 0.2 study leave on a Friday. Now, don't misunderstand, if you were, say, to negotiate for a 0.6 teaching load, that's not 3 days a week and Thursdays off and then study day Friday. It's the teaching allocation. It means that you would have a lighter allocation than a full-time teacher. but there's still an expectation that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of school weeks that you are at school as an employee, as a teacher. And Fridays, of course, is off campus where you have your university commitments. I've mentioned already you can only be employed to teach in the learning areas that you've been offered in your MTSI course. Fridays you need to keep free for your study, please. And while there is a reference rate of pay, and that reference rate of pay is paraprofessional 1.3 in the government school award. Non-government schools will use that as a guide for parity. This is not their first time around, so many of them have worked out what that looks like in their particular enterprise agreement. But if you've got queries around that, understand that the paraprofessional 1.3 rate is the equivalent rate of pay for one FTE that you can anticipate. That pay in January 2024 for 1.0 FTE was around $68,500. So let's go through the steps in the employment offer process. So the first step is that the school will make a verbal or written offer of employment you can accept or decline. If you accept it, you do it professionally and politely. If you decline it, exactly the same. Ensure you notify them in a punctual manner, and then the normal school employment processes follow. What you don't have to wait for, and in fact we insist you don't wait for, is a formal written contract. Sometimes those can take many days to come through. What you need is a verbal contract with the principal. The principal has offered you a job, you have accepted that job, and the principal has, and schools know to do this, have notified Bianca through the FOE, Faculty of Education Internship email address, and you notify us as per the instructions which you have been or will be given, to also give us an indication in writing, and an email is sufficient, that you have a verbal contract with the school. So that will start the whole thing rolling. That will lead to step two. The school will, the school's emailed, and that the school's email with your acceptance of that offer triggers an unconditional offer for the Master of Teaching internship. So you currently have a conditional offer. Once you've got a job, that turns into unconditional. Once it's unconditional, then everything can start rolling into place. It's important, and this is the second sentence in the first dot point, you must accept the offer and then enroll in your subjects straight away, because that gets you underway. It is self-enrollment. You don't wait for someone else to put you in those classes. You need to do that through the online system. If you decline, and this is in the highlighted section here, if you decline an important offer that you've accepted previously, then we need to know straight away. That would not be a good look, but sometimes it happens for a variety of reasons we don't need to go into here. It's the nature of human frailties. Teachers don't need a working with children's check. This is the third dot point, because they're registered with the VIT. It's something of a moot point with interns, but because, well, doesn't matter why, because the bottom line is that the university's made a decision that we're safest, and you're safest, by getting a volunteer working with children's check. Now, unlike the regular working with children's check, the volunteer working with children's check is free, and it's not too soon for you to apply for that now. So in your notes, make a note for yourself now that one of your action steps, besides ensuring that your uni connected profile's done and dusted before close of business tomorrow, is to start your working with children check volunteer application. Permission to teach is extremely important. There's a special form of permission to teach. Unsurprisingly, it's called permission to teach internship. It's special because once you've got it, unlike other permissions to teach where principals have to justify a shortage in the marketplace where they can't get fully registered teachers, your permission to teach is granted as a matter of course if you're enrolled in a qualifying course. And of course, the Master of Teaching internship is such a qualifying course. But you've still got to register with permission with the VIT. We will, as a university, submit your name to the VIT from our end, but the process needs to be completed by you in collaboration with your school in preparation for day one of teaching. You can't enter a classroom as a PTT until you have that permission to teach in the bag and sorted with the VIT. So that's extremely important. Further information then, another point to jot down and note, 28th October, 6 p.m, and we'll send that invite. But that's an important session where we'll explain all that detail further. The next point is an important week, and if you are currently employed, either part-time or otherwise, you need to note this week. 2nd of December is compulsory and an essential day for course orientation, a day I'll run at the university in person. 3, 4, 5, 6 is more flexible. We do ask you to be conscious of those that week and to plan to make yourself available. We've said to schools, that's the week when you can have access to interns. Some schools will run an induction on the 3rd. Some will have you in all week. It will depend on school by school, and it's something that you need to speak with your employer about, where you've won an internship, and come up with a plan and act accordingly. But please, as you can and as they require, make yourself available on those days, 3 through 6 December. Note there that, as I say, it will differ from school to school, and we can't say anything more about what exactly that would look like. You need to sort that out with your school. The intensive period, that's when the work starts in earnest, is on the 6th of January for both the 24-month candidates, program students, and the 12-month students who are transferring from their first year on campus. You see there's different end dates. The 20th is there because it is the 3rd Monday for the first year students. So that needs to be noted. So that's the Monday immediately before Australia Day. Often that Monday, that week before Australia Day, schools are open and they want to get people in, but we've said to schools that intensive doesn't finish until that day. So just be mindful of that. You also, not the 12-month candidates, but the 24-month candidates, your timetable will include Saturdays. So you need to be mindful of that in order to, previously we ran the summer intensive through November, December. That was problematic for people at work and pre-Christmas arrangements. This has been revised and really extended out into term 1 as well. You'll see that in your timetable. But so the intensive has one and a third fewer subjects and a few fewer days. But in order to fit it all in, it includes Saturdays. So that's important to note. That concludes the presentation for now, and we're in a position where we have time for questions, and I know that Freya has been monitoring the Q&A, and I'll ask Freya to guide us through that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adam. So one of the first questions that has appeared, and this one is one that's quite popular, and I know we often speak to it, so I'd love to hear, I guess, your advice on this one, and that is the likelihood of potentially not getting an internship or employment secured, how it was in the past, speaking to that one again.
Yeah. In 2024, there were many more internship places which schools were prepared to offer than there were interns available. There was one intern only who didn't secure employment at the end of the non-exclusive employment period. So that's some indication. Now, have things changed? Yes. What's changed is that we have a larger pool of interns. Is that likely to meet all demand for schools? I don't think so. But that is a professional estimate, not a hard fact, Freya. We could also, I think, say that the schools would, I say this as a former principal, if there's two reasons for employing an intern. One is because you are deeply committed at the school to supporting the profession, and you have a notion that you will create teachers better for your school and your school culture by bringing them up through an internship kind of program. Another reason why principals might employ an intern is because, and this may be more common, they have sort experienced teachers for particular areas, and there's just not those people available at the moment. Now, that stands to reason that less experienced people are going to be lower on the priority list for employment. But what that means in reality is that there are more jobs for interns as schools are getting a little bit concerned about whether they're going to fill positions. The internship market will hot up towards the end of the year. That is to say, don't despair if you've not secured an internship and it's late October, early November, because that's precisely the time when schools will become keener to look at interns as a possible avenue for them to fill their workplace needs.
Wonderful. Thank you so, so much. The next question we'll be getting a bit of, and that is about any advice you have for writing a cover letter if there's no position description attached to any of the roles the schools have advised.
Yeah, absolutely. A cover letter should never be more than one page. Your final line should be something along the lines of, I look forward to the opportunity of speaking with you at interview or meeting you in person or something of that nature. Your cover letter should very briefly in a paragraph say who you are and what brings you to the table in this particular place. Here's my name. I am a candidate for the Master of Teaching Internship at the University of Melbourne, and I present myself. I have these subjects, and I'm particularly interested in working in your school, and here are the reasons why. The schools can see very quickly a cover letter, which is a generic cover letter, which shows little or no knowledge about the school for which the candidate has applied. So do your homework, know a little bit about the school, its ethos, its culture, what it is that about it that appeals to you, and which makes you a person with the kind of dispositions that make you a good fit for this place, make you feel that you're a good fit for this place. That's what you've got to capture in a couple of paragraphs. Now, you don't have the teaching experience, but you may have industry experience, or you may have experience in working with children in a particular field, or you may have a particular passion in a subject which you know is well regarded or important in that school's curriculum. A whole host of things that you could find, but find a connection which is particular about that school, which is why you want to work there, and express it in a paragraph or less.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for speaking on that one. Have a question that's pretty popular. Actually, it's sort of like a two question one. Firstly is, do you want to talk a bit about the relationship a student on the internship will have with maybe um, other like a mentor at the school and
Mm.
teachers in the
Yeah,
program, and then also if you have any advice or have any experience of how parents might react to an intern teaching a class, if you want to
yeah,
speak to that.
sure, sure. Well, I'll speak to the last point first. Um, there's an old expression: if it looks like a fish and smells like a fish and tastes like a fish, it's a fish. And part of the problem with interns, it's part of the problem is you look like teachers, and so people just assume that you're a teacher and not an intern who's in their first year. Now that's a great compliment to all of your those who've gone before you in the internship program, who do such a fabulous job of being professional, of working with teachers, that people, teachers included, don't often enough make the distinction between intern and teacher. So um, my short answer to that part of the question is I don't think, and I haven't encountered any intern who's come across an issue with parents who don't place their trust and reliance on interns as a classroom teacher. Why? Because they're taking on the role of a classroom teacher, albeit without having completed their training. Um, so that's the first point. The second point, and I'm really pleased to answer the question and happy that the questions come up, is because it's so critically important. Um, Sometimes schools make the mistake in the desire to give you highly, highly accomplished, capable, skilled people, the deputy for your mentor. Bad, bad, bad. Not because the deputy's a bad person to have, but because the deputy's one of the, if not the busiest person in the school, and won't be able to give you, no matter how skilled and competent they are as a classroom practitioner, she or he simply won't be able to give you the time, nor will they have the proximity. And I'm talking about the physical proximity to you to guide you and support you. So what does a perfect mentor look like? It's someone who may not in fact even have middle leadership, but who's um, uh, a gun at their job. They're a bloody good teacher. They're recognised as a great classroom teacher by their peers, but they don't have so many other responsibilities in leadership or co-curricular that they don't have time for you. That's the perfect. So if I was an intern and I had a person who was an enthusiastic young teacher, 5 years of training, I would think I have just won the lottery. So and even better, if I get to sit next to them. So because that's the kind of relationship that is important for mentorship. Where that's not existed, interns have struggled. Where those mentorships are strong, um, uh, interns have felt highly affirmed and gaining confidence and feel well supported. So look to that and look to build that. If you find partway through that the mentor's not working for you, you need remember that your principal, who can seem a very distant person, um, is your employer, and they will talk to you if you make time to speak to them. You might have to go through channels, for example, the deputy or the leader of learning or the person in charge of pre-service teachers. But if the mentorship is not working for you, then you need to raise that early in the piece. I can say with confidence that it's a rare occurrence, but it does occur. So that's that person. The university's got a role too, and the university person is the clinical specialist. That's the title they're given. This is a person who's employed by the university who visits you on site. It'll only be a couple of times a term, but they are at the end of the email and sometimes the phone as well, to be able to support you in your journey, particularly in the ENAL 1, 2, and 3 subjects, ENAL standing for engaging and assessing learners. These are the 3 subjects through first and second year, which are for the on-campus students are the subjects connected to practicum. For you, your practicum is ongoing and every day, but those clinical specialists are your direct connection to the university. So there's that 3-way partnership, a great mentor, a supportive clinical specialist working in partnership with you. And they're the things that you should look to forge and it is, and I think Frey used the word a short time ago, and it's what you need to bring out in your cover letter too. This is the most relational of all professions. Are you good at relationships with young people? That's what you're going to be able to show and prove.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for answering that one. The next question is particularly around, I guess, I'll call it timeline. So, what you would say is the average amount of time between someone submitting their portfolio or contacting a school and hearing back from the school, and then if they get an offer of employment, typically, what would be the timeline they have to think about it and accept it?
Yeah, you've asked me how long a piece of string is, and so I'll answer it in those terms. But look, what we know from 2024 is that the employment period, which was 6 weeks, was a little too short, so it's been lengthened to 8 weeks. So that gives some indication. But we would assume at the end of the 8 week period, that's the 28th of October, that the majority of interns will have secured employment. Don't despair if you haven't, because the non-exclusive, non-pooled period goes through to the second week of November. How long does it take? Schools can take a week or two to shortlist candidates. Once they have shortlisted candidates, they can move fairly quickly, making appointments for the next week and then another week. So that whole process between 2 and 4 weeks. University of Melbourne candidates are highly sought after in schools. They're highly regarded in this state, and every principal wants a piece of them. So that's the good news. They also know that if they dilly-dally, that they will not have access to the best candidates. Having said that, it's also a case that you may not have learning areas which meet the needs of many schools. Although, as you know, the learning areas in the MTSI are limited, and they're limited to the most in-demand learning areas. So that's as best I can answer it. But 2 to 4 weeks would be typical, but don't despair if it's longer. And really, if you wish to be proactive, bear in mind that you can find schools that are willing to take your pushed application and push out to them.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. Just waiting to see if any further questions have come through. After just a reminder, a copy of the recording will be sent out to anyone watching, and then I'll include some key contacts and some key dates in that email as well. Another question has just come through, typically around potentially the grades and the year levels an intern might teach. Do you see a bit of a pattern, or is it they may teach anywhere from year 7 all the way through to VCE?
Yeah, very good question. It's highly typical for principals, their deputies, and their timetablers to seek to put inexperienced teachers in what might be perceived as lower stakes classes. Now, we're the high stakes classes. Year 7's high stakes in some degree, because in many secondary schools, that's the first impressions that parents and the community has of the students. So they like an experienced team. But it may be, and many schools have team teaching situations or opportunities to work closely class by class. It would not be untypical for you to be given year 7 classes because they're behaviourally, they're fresh and they're new, and they haven't learned to puff their chests out as year 8s and year 9s can. And so they're a little easier to handle. So it would not be unusual to get year 7 classes, although, as I say, they're good classes to get because the experienced members of school teams are often put there for the reasons I've suggested. The other place where the experienced teachers go, of course, is in the high stakes classes for VCE. But what's increasingly the case, and this is very much the case in rural and regional Victoria, where demand for specialist teachers is more critical, it's not uncommon, not only in 2024, but in previous years too, for interns finding themselves being asked to teach senior classes. Now, it is high stakes because people take the VC pretty seriously, as they should. But remember, it's not. It isn't sheep stations, and it's year 12. It's not. They're not sitting for doctorates. So you have been selected in your learning area because you have the commensurate knowledge from your earlier studies to begin with guidance and support teaching those areas. So while it's not common for interns to teach senior classes, you may get senior classes, particularly likely if you're in a rural or remote region and you're in a specialist area. So I say non-specialist science, highly specialist physics. That's what I mean by that. But I can't make guarantees one way or the other. But there is sometimes some negotiation available with your principal around your offer. You need to go into the interview too, like mindful. Have I got am I looking for a 0.8 internship, that is 0.6 teaching load plus 0.2 study, up to 0.8, which would give you 0.8 teaching load plus 0.2 study. What's going to be right for you? Don't just think about the money. Think about what's going to be right for you in terms of balancing work and study. What is the school prepared to offer you, and how's all that going to work? So they're really important decisions, and they need to be discussed with your potential employer.
Perfect. One question I probably will get you to speak a bit more on that we're getting is particularly how stringent and the rules around teaching subjects outside of your learning areas and
Extremely
how that would
stringent.
work.
I answer those questions very frequently, and the answer is the same. If you want to teach, if you're doing science and physics, and the school wants in 2025 for you to teach psychology, here's an example. I say ask the VIT, because if it's okay by the VIT, it's okay by us. Guess what the VIT say? If the university says it's one of your learning areas, then you can teach it. But it's not one of your learning areas. You can do 2 learning areas only in your degree. You need to nominate and enroll in those 2 learning areas, and they're the only learning areas that you're allowed to teach. Now, you can be engaged in non-teaching duties, for example, homeroom and sports coaching and other co-curricular activities. In fact, your engagement in those parts of school life will radically raise your status as a contributive member of staff. So do your best around all of that, and what works with you, and it will. And can I say too that getting involved in the co-curricular life of the school and making contribution there builds relationship with young people who then trust you and like you and want to work with you, and it makes your teaching 1,000 times easier. So now, have I answered the question there, Freya? I'm not sure that I have. Give me the question again.
The how stringent are the rules around
Yep. So
teaching
I think I've
only
answered the
your learning
question.
areas?
Very stringent, and
Yes.
can't be breached. So if there's, as I say, programs which are not teaching content, so they don't have curriculum outcomes, they're not regular teaching, then there's flexibility around all that for schools. But can you teach Victorian curriculum subjects? No.
Perfect. No, I think that's a great place to finish up. Do either of you have anything else to add before we
Yeah.
finish?
Good luck to all candidates. Remember that what the internship is unique in university courses in that you are entering into a marketplace where you're putting yourself forward with, and what you've got to offer is your dispositions as a human person in relationship with young people. You don't have the training background yet. Of course, you've got in your undergraduate degree, you've got an area of study that that you can lean on, be it science, maths, English, whatever it might be. So of course you can trumpet that, but it's your dispositions as a human person that's energetic and enthusiastic that will capture the heart of your interviewer, the principal or her or his delegate. So put your best foot forward there, and don't underestimate the how challenging the internship is, but how incredibly rewarding. You won't get much time to breathe between now and your finish in 2026, but by crikey, you'll enjoy the ride. So good luck.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so
So,
much, everyone.
and if I can add, Fred, in closing, to thank you, it would be remiss of me not to, for the work you've done in preparing for tonight. And Bianca, once again, thank you to you for all the work that goes into ensuring that behind the scenes and all the communications with our candidates, that people know what's going on and the very fact that they're here. So thank you.
Thank you as well, Adam, for such a great session. You've run a few of these, and it's always great to hear directly from the course coordinator about key information for the students. So thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.